Hello everybody. Today we're going to look at what can SAP Business Technology Platform be used for. What are the different features SAP BTP gives us and why should it be used, or what are the reasons where we can use SAP BTP in our ecosystem. Primarily, if you are looking at why SAP BTP is used, it is used for a seamless extensibility and integration scenarios for our existing SAP on-prem systems or SAP ERP boxes that we have. Typically, looking at any of the SAP boxes that we have our own data centers for an on-prem implementation that is there. Okay, so these data centers are not available in the internet. There is a firewall that comes into picture. So I have a firewall between the two data centers coming in place. Okay, so this firewall does not allow any communication from our servers to the internet. So if I want to expose my applications to the end users who are not in my system, or they're not in my network, I would want to expose it via internet and expose it via BTP for different reasons. That is one of the reasons. For this example, let us take an S4 system in our data center, and this needs to be exposed into Business Technology Platform or SAP BTP. So I have a firewall in place for us. Now this data center, if it needs to be exposed into BTP, we need to have SAP Cloud Connector installed within our data center. So this is our SAP Cloud Connector that is going to be installed within our data center. This SAP Cloud Connector can directly connect to one of the Business Technology Platform sub account. Okay, one sub account can have multiple cloud connectors. It does not stop us. And one data center can also have multiple cloud connectors, but we can just use one cloud connector and connect it to multiple BTP sub accounts that are there. In this scenario, we're going to look at one scenario where we have a connectivity that happens between BTP and the cloud connector. When BTP wants to communicate to a secure hosted data center, it needs to do it with a cloud connector installed. Now, for the cloud connector to be established with a secure tunnel, we need some services in BTP. One of the service that we look at is connectivity service. There are many services that we have in BTP. One such service that we have is connectivity. Okay, so we have a connectivity service that we have with us, and using connectivity service, we will connect to all of our on-prem installations that are there. We also have a destination service with us. Okay, so this destination service can be used to connect to the connectivity service that establishes the secure tunnel and connects to the SAP S4 system that is there inside our data center. How the on-prem system basically connects to our data, the data is exposed via OData services that are there. So I have a destination service. So this destination service can be used to connect to a cloud connector, which is that. So let us rename this. So the destination service internally connects to the cloud connector. The cloud connector then connects to the on-prem system, and our connectivity is established. The destination will be consumed by our application. So these applications can be any of those applications. Yeah. So let us look at one of the application may need to be, let's call it a Node.js application that we have. So we have a Node.js application, and this Node.js application will call the instance of the destination, and from the instance of the destination it can connect to the connectivity and then communicate to the on-prem systems which are there. How does on-prem system communicate? Like we talked about, it communicates with the cloud connector using the OData services that we have, and there is a connection that is established. Okay, so now we know how our application basically connects to our on-prem systems that are there. So all of these things, connectivity, destination, our application, different modules put together, we can actually have another UI5 application coming in picture. Okay, so we can have all of these things together forming one multi-target application which is there. Okay, or you can also have a multi-tenant application, different kinds of applications that are there. Now when you're running these applications, okay, we need to look at how we can expose our systems to our end users. Okay, so how will our end users come in and then consume these applications? Our end users come and consume these applications via the client devices or the application clients. One of that application clients is a computer, or they can also come and then come through to a mobile device which is there. Okay, so we call them our enterprise users who are there. These users are available on the internet. How are these users available on the internet? All of our systems connect to the internet and then they can communicate. If we are connected to the internet and also connected to the on-prem servers which are there, then we are inside the network and we are inside the firewall. Okay, but most of the cases, well, let's say we are using a handheld device and then they are exposed to the internet, we don't have a VPN connection to have that secure connection inside our server. So we can use that to connect to SAP Business Technology Platform. If the end users are connecting to Business Technology Platform, we need a service or a subscription that will help us connect to our applications. That subscription is nothing but Launchpad subscription. Right now it is called SAP Build Work Zones which are there. So bringing in my Launchpad service, okay, let me go ahead and then rename this. So we'll call it as Launchpad or Build Work Zone. My end users connect to our applications via the Launchpad or Fiori Launchpad portal service, which was previously known as portal service, which was that. So they connect to the Launchpad. Once they connect to the Launchpad internally will connect to the UI5 applications that are hosted in our sub account. UI5 application, if it needs to communicate to the destination service, it can go across, communicate directly to the destination service, and the destination service internally can communicate to the Node.js application. Okay, so this is a two-way connection that we can say which we have. So let's change the arrow mark. So it's a two-way connection that can happen. So the destination service will internally redirect requests coming from SAP UI5 application to the Node.js that we have. Okay, just rearranging few things. So that these things happen within our applications. Now, where do we develop these applications? Like Launchpad or FLP is one of our subscription. We also have another subscription called as Business Application Studio. So we have Business Application Studio denoted by this logo. Let's rename this. Business Application Studio has an integrated Cloud Foundry CLI that will allow us to log into our development spaces within BTP. We have a previous video that helps us understand how BTP is positioned, how we have different accounts, where do we deploy our applications, what is development space. I'll put up a link for it. You can go ahead and see that. But Business Application Studio is the integrated development environment that we use to connect to our applications. Now, connectivity as a service is used in a multi-target application, but connectivity or the cloud connectors in place are available on the account level also. They are not just within the multi-target applications that we have. Okay, so I'm just going to remove them into and bring them into the business technology platform account, so that we can say that Business Application Studio can also go ahead and connect to our destination, and from our destination it will communicate to the cloud connector and also has the ability to connect to S4 system. Now, destination service, or the destination on the whole. Okay, so we'll remove the service out of it. The destinations that we have, these destinations define different authentication methods. One of the methods that is strongly used in an enterprise setting is principal propagation. The other word is single sign-on, which means if I log in to SAP BTP as a user, my user details should propagate from one system to another system. We've all looked at different kinds of installations that are there in our on-prem system. We have hub installation, we have embedded installations coming in place, we have web dispatchers in between. So we using web dispatcher, we can redirect it to different servers that we have. So there are multiple handshakes that needs to happen between the system. So if a user logs in to SAP BTP using business technology platform and he wants to communicate to S4 system, then his user details must go to the destination. Destination should then forward it to the cloud connector. Cloud connector will then forward it to the SAP cloud connector that is hosted in the system, and that will propagate to S4 system. During all these things, the trust is managed using client certificates. Okay. Another example, if you don't want to use Business Application Studio, is if a user logs into the system, he logs into the Launchpad. The Launchpad then redirects to the UI5 application that communicates till the on-prem system to consume a no data service. This also needs client certificates to be passed between the system. So as soon as the user logs in, we have a service, XSUAA service of the system to identify who the user is. Okay, we'll look at how the trust is established between the identity authentication tenant and then the user store that is there. So if you look at the bottom right corner of our architecture diagram that we're drawing right now, okay, so in this, so we have an identity authentication tenant. So all the requests that come into the system are first redirected to the identity authentication system that we have. IAS may be one of the trust enabling things, which can have the user stored there, or it can be a proxy that redirects to your enterprise user accounts, user stores that are there. So authenticates who the user is and issues the tokens to the user. That token is then forwarded to the launchpad service. From the launchpad service, it is then again forwarded into the application that gets forwarded to the destination. The destination, if it is single sign-on or principal propagation, it then signals the cloud connector to attach the cloud connector's short-lived certificates, and that short-lived certificates are then sent to the on-prem system. So in the on-prem system, we have cert rule where we need to establish the short-lived certificates subject, and the client certificate should be imported so that the incoming communication is referred as trusted communication, and we should be able to communicate with our system with single sign-on. So we use that identity authentication tenant. Ideally, an XSUA service that we have will help us authenticate who the user is within an application. That is why we have an app router. So all the application do not directly go into the UI5 application. So we'll bring in an app router service now. So this is not exactly the right logo for app router, but we're going to consider this as app router. So our request comes into the app router, and then app router will internally redirect the request to the UI5 applications that we have. Okay, just zooming in, trying to get some tidiness in place. So we have the app router that will then redirect. This will come to the destination and then goes into the Node.js application that we have. So this is how a multi-target application can work. Okay, so we have different services that are used, different subscriptions that are used. So the business application studio is the IDE that we use to deploy the applications, and the connectivity and the destination services are used to maintain the connection between different requests that we have. Now let's say if we have a HANA database with us. Okay, we know inside our development spaces that are available in BTP, we have only HDI containers. The actual physical database is in our sub account. Something similar to the subscription that we have for Launchpad, we also have a subscription for our HANA service that we have. Previously we had HANA as a service. Now we have HANA Cloud. We have migrated across to HANA, SAP HANA Cloud, which we have. So let me bring in, let's label it across. So we have SAP HANA Cloud with us. The SAP HANA Cloud will basically be an internal communication that might happen via the HDI containers that is there. The HDI container will have a schema. That schema will have the HANA artifact stored in the HANA Cloud, which is there. So let me bring in this from here to here. So we'll call it as HDI container so that we understand what it is. They are not actual HANA DB in place, but it is a HDI container that we have. Okay. So the HANA DB and HDI container are together. They are two-way communication that is established always. Okay, they are talking to each other. Each space will have multiple things. The Node.js application internally will have a database connection, and it can communicate to HDI containers and consume the schema. All of our CDS schemas, all of the data modelings that we do, we are able to consume it with that Node.js service that we have. Similarly, we can have multiple different communications. Yeah, so anything that is outside the space, that is outside the applications are considered as subscriptions that we have. Launchpad, Business Application Studio, HANA Cloud, all of these are subscriptions. Anything that is used inside the multi-target applications are service instances, helping us use the modules. The different modules that we have is SAP UI5, Node.js, HDI container, all of these are different modules. So these service instances are two-way. They have a leg inside the application, they have a leg outside in the account level to help us seamlessly communicate. Some of the other subscriptions or the services that we can think of are workflow service, business rule service, process visibility service. All of these are different services that are there. All the communications from the client that comes into SAP BTP is HTTPS request, and then we send that across with the same protocols to SAP S4HANA, which is that. So we'll look at one more service before we end today. We're going to look at a service called as Event Mesh, which does not work on HTTP. It works on AMQP protocols, which is there. Now that is initiated from our data center. Okay, so all this while we were talking about how SAP BTP can communicate to the S4 system. Now in a scenario we want to communicate from S4 to BTP. We don't want to keep it out. We don't want to have an open service that is there. How do we protect SAP BTP and also have the communication from within our data centers to BTP? We're going to see that example with Event Mesh. So we're going to bring up one service that is called as Enterprise Messaging or Event Mesh. So we're going to call it Event Mesh to help us understand. So we have Event Mesh, that is a subscription or a service that we have enabled in SAP BTP. Now as soon as we enable this, we're going to remove this multi-target application and make it as development space. Okay, we have applications within that. Okay. So in the development space, we create a service instance. This service instance will have some service keys that will be enabled in that. Using service keys, we get client credentials. So internally, if I have to say, so let me draw a picture. I have a service key. Service key is linked to the service. It's a 1:1 linkage that happens inside the service instance. We have a service key. Inside service key, we have client credentials. Ideally, we have something called as UAA, inside which you have client credentials that come into picture. Now in S4 HANA, which is our on-prem system, so we're going to name this as our on-prem system. So we're going to create an RFC destination. This RFC destination has an OAuth profile. What is an OAuth profile? We look at what is OAuth, and there are other videos within our playlist which talks about what is OAuth. I'm going to put a link to it. But in a nutshell, OAuth is when a communication between two secure system occurs via bearer token. So there is a separate server that issues a token, and that token is sent in each request as a header, and then it validates and the requests are accepted if the token is valid. So I'm going to put in now an OAuth profile that is attached to this destination. It's going to bring it into new. So I have an OAuth profile that is attached to this destination. So this goes across. So let's change the connector type if possible. Okay, let's make this and then move it across. Okay. Making some room. So now I have my RFC destination, I have an OAuth profile. Now what are these events that are going to be triggered? Okay. The events that are, events can be anything in the system. Somebody logging into the system can be an event. Okay. Or a purchase order is created, that is an event. Or sales order is rejected, that's an event. Okay. These are different events that happen in the system. So now these events need to be communicated to all of the listeners who are there. Okay. So just so that we don't forget, we have the client credentials attached to our OAuth profile. Okay. The event mesh URL is attached to our RFC destination. This setup is done. Okay. So the events, one of the example that is a PO created event. Okay. Needs to be communicated. So there is a daemon user that runs in the S4 system that internally consumes this RFC destination, and this RFC destination consumes this OAuth profile and then sends the request from the RFC destination to event mesh. So by doing this, I'm able to communicate with RFC destination to my business technology platform. But to have a protected request, it's going to go via the OAuth profile, which attaches a bearer token to the request, and that is sent to the event mesh. Event mesh then validates that bearer token and accepts the request. When it accepts the request, it is going to have different queues and topics and receives the message that PO is created and stores it in a particular queue and a topic which is there. It can also be multiple. We are not going to look at what happens inside event mesh. This is an example of how SAP S4 HANA can communicate to BTP via OAuth profiles and RFC destinations that are there. Okay, just to summarize what we have done. We have BTP that is hosted or available in the internet. We have our data centers available in the firewall. You need a cloud connector to establish communication from BTP to S4 system, which is inside an on-prem. You have different services inside BTP. Some are developer-centric services like SAP Business Application Studio. Some are end-user respective Launchpad service that we have. The applications which are inside the development space consumes different service instances that are a liaison between the account and the applications which are there. A cloud connectivity service is consumed by the destination. The destination is consumed by the application, and the end user's requests are sent across different systems that we have. And then the communication is established via OData and you can receive it. This is a scenario where BTP communicates to S4. But we also have scenarios when S4 wants to communicate to BTP, and we have client credentials that are created, and the client credentials are used in the RFC destinations OAuth profile and then communicate it to the respective endpoints which are there inside SAP BTP. This is how the entire ecosystem between SAP S4 or any SAP on-prem system and SAP BTP can be achieved. Thank you. See you again.